June Prescott pulled the mail satchel strap tight across her shoulder and met the stranger's eyes without flinching. His hand rested on the porch rail, close enough that she could see the calluses and the dirt under his nails, close enough that stepping past him would mean brushing his coat. The morning cold bit through her dress, and the weight in her satchel felt heavier than letters and parcels. He had been waiting when she arrived, hat pulled low, jaw set, and she knew before he spoke that this was trouble. Men who waited in silence outside a post office at dawn wanted something they could not ask for in daylight. He tilted his head, studying her face. "You the mail carrier?" She nodded once. He glanced at the satchel. "I need to know if a letter came through for the Moonstone Ranch." "Name of Keene." She kept her expression smooth. "I deliver mail. I do not discuss it." His mouth tightened. That letter could save the ranch or see it taken at auction in 3 days. Either you have it or you do not. She stepped down, forcing him to move or block her path. He stepped aside, but kept pace. The frozen street crunched under their boots. "I am Levi Keene. That ranch is my family's name, and the bank is calling the note because someone said my father took money that was not his. If there is a letter with proof, I need it now." She glanced sideways. "If you are who you say, the letter will reach the ranch when I ride the route." He caught her wrist, not rough but firm. "By then the auction will be done." She stopped and looked at his hand on her arm, then at his face. "Let go." He did, immediately. But his eyes stayed hard. "You do not understand. That letter is the only thing standing between my family and ruin." She adjusted the satchel. "Then you should have made sure it arrived before the auction was scheduled." She walked on, heart pounding, and did not look back. Behind her, his voice followed, low and frustrated. "You do not know what you are carrying." She knew exactly what she was carrying. 3 nights ago, a rider had passed through Iron Gulch in the dark and left a sealed envelope on the post office counter with instructions to hold it until called for. She had opened it. Inside were 2 pages, handwritten, detailing payments made by the Iron Gulch Bank to a land surveyor named Calloway. Payments that matched the amount missing from the Moonstone Ranch account. The letter was signed by a clerk in a neighboring county, and it named the bank manager, Horace Trent, as the man who had arranged the false accusation against the Keene family. She had stolen those papers. She had hidden them in her coat lining. And now, the man whose name they could clear was walking away believing she was just another frontier clerk, too careful to bend a rule. She delivered the morning mail to the Mercantile, the saloon, and the land office, keeping her movements steady, her face calm. By midday, she was back at the post office sorting parcels when the door rattled open, and Levi Keene stepped inside, this time with his hat in his hands. He waited until she looked up. "I should not have grabbed you. I am sorry." She set down the parcels. "Apology noted." He shifted his weight. "The auction is day after tomorrow. If that letter has what I think it has, my father's name gets cleared and the note gets called off. If it does not arrive, we lose everything." She crossed her arms. "Why would the bank call a note on a ranch that is paying?" He exhaled slowly. "Because my father confronted Horace Trent about missing funds 6 months ago. A week later, Trent claimed my father had taken the money himself. No proof, just an accusation, but enough to spook the note holders. They want their money now, or they want the land." She watched his face. And you think this letter proves Trent set him up? He nodded. I know it does. She leaned against the counter. If you know what is in the letter, you have already seen it. His jaw tightened. I have not seen anything. But the man who sent it told me what it would say before he died. She felt the edge of the folded papers pressing through the lining of her coat, hanging on the peg behind her. And what do you want from me? He met her eyes. I want you to tell me if it came through. And if it did, I want you to give it to me now. Not in 2 days when it is too late. She should have handed him the papers. She should have told him the truth. Instead, she said, I cannot give you something that does not belong to you. He stared at her. It belongs to my family. She shook her head. It belongs to whoever it was addressed to. He slapped his hat against his thigh. You are going to let a rule destroy people because you are afraid to make a choice. She straightened. I am going to do my job. He turned and walked out, the door slamming behind him. She stood alone in the post office, pulse hammering, and pulled the coat off the peg. The papers crinkled under her fingers. She had stolen them, because she knew what men like Horace Trent did to people who had no power to fight back. Her own father had lost his freight business to a contract he could not read, and a banker who rewrote the terms after the ink dried. She had been 16. She had watched her father drink himself silent, and her mother pack their belongings into a wagon and leave Colorado without looking back. That wound had taught her to read every paper twice, to trust no man in a clean collar, and to take what she needed when the system would not give it. But stealing papers to ruin Trent and stealing them to help the Keens were not the same thing. And now she was caught between the lie she had built and the man who needed what she had taken. That night, she walked to the edge of town, where the road split toward the Moonstone Ranch. The sky was clear and cold, stars sharp as broken glass. She did not know what she was doing. She only knew that if the auction happened and the ranch was lost, she would be the reason. She heard hoofbeats and turned to see a rider coming fast from the direction of the ranch. The horse slowed as it reached her, and Levi Keene swung down, boots hitting the frozen ground hard. What are you doing out here? She lifted her chin. Walking. He looked past her toward the dark road. Alone, in the cold. After dark. She did not answer. He stepped closer. You are running. She laughed, short and bitter. If I were running, I would be gone. He studied her face in the starlight. You know something. She felt the papers inside her coat, pressed against her ribs. I know a lot of things. He shook his head. You know something about that letter. She met his eyes. What if I do? His expression shifted, guarded hope breaking through. Then tell me. She pulled the folded pages from her coat and held them out. He stared at them, then at her. You had them. She nodded. I took them. He took the papers carefully, unfolding them in the dim light, reading fast. His breath misted in the cold. This is it. This is everything. He looked up, eyes blazing. Why did you take them? She wrapped her arms around herself. Because I knew what Trent was, and I wanted to stop him. He refolded the papers, his hands shaking slightly. You were going to use this yourself. She did not deny it. But then you showed up. And now you have it. He stepped closer. You just saved my family. She shook her head. I just gave you stolen property. If Trent finds out, he will come after both of us. Levi tucked the papers inside his coat. Let him try. He walked her back to the edge of town, leading his horse by the reins. Neither of them spoke until they reached the post office. She stopped at the door. What will you do now? He looked down at her. Take this to the county clerk in the morning. File it before the auction. Clear my father's name. She nodded. And Trent. He smiled, cold and sharp. Trent will have to explain where that money went. She felt a flicker of satisfaction, dangerous and bright. Good. He tilted his head. You could come with me. To the clerk, in case there are questions. She hesitated. I have a mail route to run. He stepped closer. June. It was the first time he had said her name. You gave me this. You are part of it now. Whether you want to be or not. She knew he was right. She also knew that riding to the county seat with Levi Keene would make her visible in a way she had spent 2 years avoiding. But the alternative was waiting in Iron Gulch while Trent figured out what had happened. And that was not survival. It was surrender. All right, I will go. He exhaled, relief softening his face. We leave at first light. She nodded and went inside, bolting the door behind her. Through the window, she watched him mount and ride back toward the ranch, and she wondered if she had just chosen the right ally or the wrong enemy. Morning came fast and gray. She wore her warmest dress, her heaviest coat, and boots she could ride in. She tied her mail satchel closed and left it on the counter with a note saying she would return tomorrow. She did not say where she was going. Levi was waiting at the edge of town with 2 horses, one saddled for her. He handed her the reins. The clerk's office is 4 hours north. We file the documents, we come back, and tomorrow the auction either happens or it does not. She swung into the saddle. And if Trent tries to stop us? Levi's expression went hard. Then we make sure he does not succeed. They rode in silence for the first hour, the cold biting through their coats. The landscape empty and white, where frost clung to the grass. She watched him from the corner of her eye. The way he sat easy in the saddle. The way his gaze swept the horizon like he was expecting trouble. Finally, she said, "Why did you wait outside the post office that first morning? If you thought I had the letter, why not just ask?" He glanced at her. "I did not know if you would help, or if you were one of Trent's." She laughed, short and sharp. "I am nobody's." He smiled faintly. "I figured that out." They stopped at midday to rest the horses and eat cold biscuits from his saddlebag. She sat on a flat rock, pulling her coat tighter, and he crouched nearby, scanning the road behind them. "You think someone is following?" He shook his head. "Not yet. But Trent has friends." She bit into the biscuit. "So do you." He looked at her. "Do I?" She met his eyes. "You have me." He held her gaze for a long moment, something shifting in his face. And then he looked away. "That is more than I had yesterday." They reached the county seat by late afternoon. A town twice the size of Iron Gulch with a courthouse, a sheriff's office, and a clerk's building that looked like it had been standing since before the war. Levi dismounted and helped her down, his hand steady on her arm. Inside, the clerk was a narrow man with ink-stained fingers and a skeptical expression. Levi handed him the papers. "I need these filed as evidence in a foreclosure dispute. Iron Gulch Bank against Moonstone Ranch." The clerk unfolded the pages, read slowly, and looked up. Where did you get these? Levi's jaw tightened. They were sent by a county clerk in Silverton, who died 3 weeks ago. The man he named in those documents is the bank manager who accused my father of theft. The clerk tapped the pages. This accuses Horace Trent of embezzlement. Levi nodded. It does. The clerk leaned back. You understand that filing this will trigger an investigation. And if Trent is connected, he will know you are the one who brought it forward. Levi's voice stayed level. I understand. The clerk looked at June. And you are? She kept her face calm. A witness. The clerk's eyes narrowed. To what? She met his gaze. To the documents being delivered. He studied her for another moment, then stamped the papers and handed Levi a receipt. File. If the investigation finds merit, the foreclosure will be suspended pending resolution. If it does not, the auction proceeds as scheduled. Outside, Levi folded the receipt and tucked it into his coat. That is the best we are going to get. She nodded. Now we wait. He looked at the sky, darkening toward evening. We should stay the night. Ride back in the morning. She glanced at the street, at the strangers passing, at the unfamiliar buildings. There is an inn 2 blocks down. He touched her elbow lightly. I will get us rooms. She followed him through the cold, feeling the weight of what they had just done settle over her like a stone. The inn was small and plain, with a narrow common room that smelled of coffee and wood smoke. Levi paid for 2 rooms, and they sat near the fire to eat stew and bread. She watched him across the table, the way his shoulders had loosened slightly now that the papers were filed, the way his hands moved careful and deliberate when he broke the bread. You did not have to bring me. He looked up. Yes, I did. She frowned. Why? He set down his spoon. Because you took a risk I did not ask you to take. And because if this goes wrong, you deserve to be there when it does. She felt something tighten in her chest, unfamiliar and uncomfortable. I am not used to people thinking that way. He leaned back. What way? She shrugged. Like I matter. He held her eyes. You do. She looked away, heat rising in her face, and focused on her stew. After a moment, he said, Why did you really take those papers? She set down her spoon. I told you. I knew what Trent was. He shook his head. There is more. She met his gaze. My father lost everything to a man like Trent. I watched it happen. I watched him break. I swore I would never let it happen to someone else, if I could stop it. Levi's expression softened. So you steal from thieves? She smiled faintly. Something like that. He leaned forward. That is a dangerous habit. She lifted her chin. So is trusting people who steal. He laughed, low and surprised. Fair enough. They finished eating in silence, and when he walked her upstairs to her door, he paused. Thank you. For today. For all of it. She nodded, throat tight. Get some sleep. Tomorrow might be worse. She lay awake in the narrow bed, listening to the wind rattle the window frame and the muffled sounds of the town settling into night. She thought about Levi in the next room, about the papers now filed and locked in a clerk's office, about Horace Trent waking tomorrow to discover that his carefully built lie was unraveling. She thought about her father, silent and broken, and about the choice she had made to stop being silent herself. Sleep came late and restless. Morning brought low clouds and the smell of coming snow. They rode south fast, pushing the horses harder than was safe, both of them feeling the urgency without naming it. By midday, they were an hour from Iron Gulch, when Levi pulled up sharply and pointed to the road ahead. Riders. 3 of them. Coming this way. June shaded her eyes. Do you know them? He nodded grimly. Trent's men. She felt her pulse spike. How did they know? Levi's voice was tight. Someone at the clerk's office must have sent word. Or Trent has been watching the road. The riders closed the distance fast, spreading out to block the road. June recognized the man in the center, a thick-shouldered enforcer named Darnell who worked collections for the bank. Levi reined in, and June stopped beside him. Darnell leaned forward in his saddle. Keen, you have been busy. Levi's voice stayed level. Just filing papers. Darnell smiled coldly. Papers that do not belong to you. Levi shook his head. Papers that prove your boss is a thief. Darnell's smile vanished. Trent says you stole bank documents. That makes you a criminal. And the lady there helped. June felt ice slide down her spine. Levi shifted his weight. We filed those documents with the county clerk. If Trent wants to dispute them, he can do it in court. Darnell pulled a folded paper from his coat. I have a warrant here says you are wanted for theft and conspiracy. Both of you. Levi's expression went hard. That warrant is a lie. Darnell shrugged. Sheriff does not care. He wants you back in Iron Gulch. Now. June's hands tightened on the reins. And if we refuse? Darnell's hand moved to his gun belt. Then we bring you back the hard way. Levi looked at June, his eyes sharp and steady. Stay behind me. She shook her head. I am not hiding. He leaned closer, voice low. If they take us both, no one will know what happened. You have to get clear and find help. She met his gaze. I am not leaving you. His jaw clenched. June. She cut him off. No. Darnell called out. Time is up. You coming peaceful or not? Levi straightened in the saddle. We will come back. But we are riding in together. Not in irons. Darnell considered. Fine. But you try anything, we shoot. They rode in flanked by Trent's men, the tension thick as smoke. June kept her eyes forward, her mind racing. The warrant was false, she knew that. But a false warrant could still put them in a cell long enough for Trent to make the investigation disappear. They needed leverage. They needed someone in Iron Gulch who would stand against Trent. By the time they reached the edge of town, snow was falling in thin, dry flakes, and the streets were nearly empty. Darnell led them to the sheriff's office, a squat building with barred windows, and a door that looked like it had been kicked in more than once. Inside, the sheriff was a gray-haired man named Polk, who looked like he had stopped caring about justice sometime in the previous decade. He took the warrant from Darnell and read it without expression. Theft of bank property. Conspiracy to defraud. He looked at Levi. You have anything to say? Levi pulled the receipt from his coat. I filed those documents with the county clerk yesterday. They are evidence of embezzlement by Horace Trent. Polk barely glanced at the receipt. That does not change the warrant. He nodded to Darnell. Put them in the back. June stepped forward. We have the right to see a judge. Polk's eyes flicked to her. Judge is not due until next week. You will wait in a cell until then. She felt panic rising. By then the auction will be over and Trent will have destroyed the evidence. Polk shrugged. Not my problem. Darnell grabbed Levi's arm and Levi jerked free, his voice hard. You are making a mistake. Polk stood slowly. Boy, the only mistake here is yours. Now get in that cell, or I will have you dragged. June met Levi's eyes. He gave a tiny shake of his head, a warning, and let Darnell lead him to the back. Another man took June's arm, and she went without fighting, her mind spinning. The cell was small and cold. 2 bunks and a barred window too high to reach. Levi stood near the bars, hands clenched. She stepped close. We need to get word out. To someone who can push back against Trent. He nodded. My father. If he knows we are here, he can bring the ranch hands and make enough noise that Polk will have to act. She looked at the window. How do we get a message out? He followed her gaze. We wait until dark. And we hope someone is listening. Night came slow and cold. They sat side by side on one bunk, shoulders touching, neither speaking. Finally, Levi said, I should not have brought you into this. She looked at him. You did not bring me. I chose. He shook his head. You chose because I pushed. She touched his arm. I chose because it was right. He turned to face her. You could have stayed quiet, kept your head down, been safe. She smiled faintly. I have never been good at safe. He studied her face in the dim light from the hallway. Why not? She hesitated. Because safe means invisible. And invisible means powerless. And I watched my father be powerless until it killed him. Levi's hand covered hers on his arm. I am sorry. She nodded. So am I. He leaned closer. If we get out of this, I owe you more than a thank you. She felt heat rise in her chest, sharp and unfamiliar. You do not owe me anything. He smiled, small and real. Yes, I do. She held his gaze, the space between them narrowing, and for a moment, the cell and the cold and the danger all fell away. Then footsteps echoed in the hallway, and they pulled apart. A man appeared at the bars, older, weathered, with Levi's eyes. He looked at his son. I heard you were here. Levi stood quickly. Pa, how did you know? The older man glanced at June. Word travels. Trent is telling everyone you stole bank documents and forged evidence. Levi's jaw tightened. It is not forged. We filed it with the county clerk. His father nodded. I know. I got word from Silverton this afternoon. The clerk there confirmed the letter before he died. That evidence is real. Levi gripped the bars. Then why are we in here? His father's expression darkened. Because Polk is on Trent's payroll, and because the auction is tomorrow morning. If you are not there to contest it, Trent gets the ranch. June stepped forward. Can you get us out? The older man looked at her, then at Levi. I can try, but if I break you out, you will be fugitives. Levi's voice was firm. We are already fugitives. His father exhaled slowly. Then we do it tonight. Be ready. An hour later, the jail went dark. June heard a crash from the front office, then shouting. Levi grabbed her hand. Stay close. The cell door swung open, and his father stepped in, key ring in hand. Out. Now. They ran through the dark hallway, past the empty office where the desk had been overturned and the window shattered. Outside, horses were waiting. Levi's father handed them the reins. Head to the ranch. I will hold them off as long as I can. Levi hesitated. Pa. His father gripped his shoulder. Go. Clear our name. Levi nodded, swung into the saddle, and pulled June up behind him. They rode hard into the night, the town vanishing behind them in a blur of snow and shadows. They reached the Moonstone Ranch before dawn, a sprawling cluster of buildings and corrals tucked into a shallow valley. Levi helped her down and led her into the main house, where a fire still burned low in the hearth. She sank into a chair, exhausted, and he crouched beside her. You all right? She nodded. Your father. He stood, jaw tight. He will be fine. He is too stubborn to let Polk get the better of him. She wanted to believe him. Instead, she said, what now? He looked toward the window. Now we get ready. Because when the sun comes up, we are riding into that auction and we are stopping it. Morning came cold and clear. Levi changed into clean clothes, a dark coat and a hat that made him look harder, older. June washed her face and tied her hair back, her burgundy dress dusty but still holding its shape. He handed her a tin cup of coffee and she drank it standing, watching the light spread across the valley. This is it. He nodded. This is it. She set down the cup. If it goes wrong, he cut her off. It will not. She met his eyes. But if it does, I want you to know I do not regret any of this. His expression softened. Neither do I. They rode into Iron Gulch with 2 ranch hands, both armed, both silent. The auction was set for 10 o'clock in the main hall, a high-ceilinged building that doubled as a meeting house and a courthouse when the circuit judge came through. By the time they arrived, the hall was packed, men in coats and hats crowding the benches, Horace Trent standing near the front with a tight smile on his face. The auctioneer stood at the podium, gavel in hand. Levi dismounted and June followed, her heart pounding. Trent saw them, and his smile vanished. Levi pushed through the crowd and stopped in front of the auctioneer. I am here to contest this foreclosure. The auctioneer looked annoyed. You are late, and there is a warrant out for your arrest. Levi pulled the receipt from his coat. I filed evidence with the county clerk, proving that Horace Trent embezzled the funds he accused my father of stealing. This foreclosure is based on a false claim. Trent stepped forward, his face red. That is a lie. Those documents are forged. Levi's voice cut through the room. Then you will have no problem answering questions when the investigation is complete. The crowd murmured. The auctioneer hesitated. I do not have authority to suspend this auction based on an accusation. Levi turned to face the crowd. Then you all should know what you are buying. This ranch is not in default. The debt was manufactured by a man who stole money and blamed my father to cover it up. If you bid today, you are buying stolen land. Trent's voice rose. That is slander. Levy ignored him. The county clerk has the proof. If any of you want to see it, ride north and ask. A man in the back stood. I know that clerk. If he filed it, it is real. Another voice joined in. Trent has been pushing foreclosures all year. Maybe the boy is right. The auctioneer banged his gavel. Order. But the room stayed loud. Men talking over each other, doubt spreading like fire. Trent grabbed the auctioneer's arm. Start the bidding. Now. The auctioneer looked uncertain. I need to confirm the documents. Trent's voice turned sharp. You need to do your job. June stepped forward. If you start this auction, you are complicit in fraud. The auctioneer stared at her. And who are you? She lifted her chin. A witness. And a citizen, someone who will make sure every paper in this territory knows what happened here today. Trent turned on her. You are a thief. You stole bank property. She met his glare. I took evidence. You stole money. There is a difference. Levy moved beside her, his presence steady and solid. She felt his hand brush hers, brief and grounding. The door banged open, and Sheriff Polk walked in, Darnell at his side. Polk pointed at Levi. You are under arrest. Levi held his ground. On what charge? Polk pulled his gun. Escaping custody. Resisting arrest. Take your pick. The crowd shifted, uneasy. One of the ranch hands stepped forward. Sheriff, you might want to think about what you are doing. Polk swung the gun toward him. Stay out of this. Levi's voice stayed calm. You are going to arrest me in front of 50 witnesses for contesting a fraudulent foreclosure. Polk's face darkened. I am arresting you for breaking out of my jail. June stepped between them. He did not break out. He was released by his father, who had every right to question a false warrant. Polk's eyes narrowed. You want to join him in a cell? She did not flinch. If that is what it takes. Levi touched her arm, a warning, but she stayed put. The auctioneer banged his gavel again. This is not a trial. Either we proceed or we adjourn. Trent turned on him. We proceed. The auctioneer hesitated, looked at the crowd, and set down the gavel. I am adjourning until the county clerk confirms the documents. Trent's face went white. You do not have that authority. The auctioneer straightened. I have the authority to delay a sale if there is reasonable doubt about the claim. And right now, there is. Polk raised his gun again. Then I am taking Keene into custody until it is sorted. Levi's voice was ice. You try that, and this crowd will have questions about who you work for. Polk hesitated. The room held its breath. Finally, Polk lowered the gun. You have until the clerk confirms or denies those documents. After that, the warrant stands. Levi nodded. Fair enough. The crowd filed out slowly, men casting glances at Trent, at Levi, at June. She felt the weight of their attention like heat on her skin. Outside, the cold air bit sharp and clean. Levi turned to her. You should not have stepped in front of that gun. She looked up at him. Neither should you. He smiled, tight and real. We are a pair. She felt something crack open in her chest, warm and dangerous. Yes, we are. They spent the rest of the day at the ranch, waiting for word from the county clerk. Levi's father returned near sunset, bruised but whole. Polk let me go once the auction was delayed. He looked at June. You stood up to him. She shrugged. Someone had to. He nodded slowly. You are welcome here, as long as you need. She felt her throat tighten. Thank you. Levi caught her eye across the room, and she saw the same tightness in his face, the same fragile hope. That night, they stood outside near the corral, the sky bright with stars and the air so cold it hurt to breathe. Levi leaned against the fence, silent. June stepped beside him. What are you thinking? He glanced at her. That I do not know what happens next. She nodded. Neither do I. He turned to face her. If the clerk confirms the documents, the ranch is safe. Trent goes down. The warrant disappears. She met his eyes. And if he does not. Levi's jaw tightened. Then we run. She felt her pulse spike. Together. He held her gaze. If you will have me. She stepped closer. Close enough to feel the heat from his coat. Close enough to see the way his breath misted in the cold. I spent 2 years invisible. Safe. Quiet. And I hated it. He touched her face, his hand rough and warm. You are not invisible. She leaned into his touch. I know. Because you see me. He smiled, soft and almost shy. I do. She kissed him then, quick and fierce, and he pulled her close, his arms solid and sure around her. When they pulled apart, she was shaking. He rested his forehead against hers. Stay, she whispered. I am not going anywhere. Word came 2 days later. The county clerk confirmed the documents. An investigation was opened into Horace Trent's finances. The foreclosure was suspended indefinitely. The warrant against Levi and June was declared invalid and withdrawn. Polk resigned. Trent disappeared before the sheriff from the county seat could arrest him, but his accounts were frozen and his name was ruined. The Moonstone Ranch was safe. Levi's father stood in the main room of the ranch house and shook June's hand. You saved us. She shook her head. We saved each other. Levi found her later that afternoon near the barn, mending a bridle she did not need to mend. He sat beside her. You could go back to Iron Gulch. Pick up your mail route. She set down the leather. I could. He waited. She looked at him. Or I could stay here. He went still. And do what? She smiled. Whatever needs doing. Mail carrier. Ranch hand. Partner. He took her hand. Partner. She nodded. If you will have me. He laughed, bright and surprised. You are quoting me. She leaned into him. I learned from the best. They were married in the spring. A small ceremony in the main hall where the auction had been. The same crowd that had watched them fight now, watching them choose each other. She wore a new dress, deep green, and he wore a clean coat and a smile that made her heart ache. When the preacher said they were bound, Levi kissed her like he was sealing a promise, and she kissed him back like she was claiming ground. Afterward, they rode out to the edge of the property, where the valley opened wide and the sky stretched forever. He pulled her close. No regrets. She shook her head. Not one. She took over the mail route again, but now she rode out from the ranch instead of the post office, and Levi rode with her when the work allowed. People in Iron Gulch got used to seeing them together. The mail carrier and the ranch hand who had stood down a banker and a sheriff and won. Some called them trouble. Others called them brave. June did not care what they called them, as long as they stayed out of the way. She had spent too long being invisible to apologize for being seen now. The ranch grew. Levi's father hired more hands and expanded the herd. June started keeping the books, her sharp eye for numbers and her suspicion of bankers making her better at it than anyone expected. They built a small house on the far edge of the property. 2 rooms and a porch that faced the sunrise. It was not much, but it was theirs, and that was enough. On cold nights, they sat by the fire and talked about the future, about the children they might have, about the land they would protect, about the fight they had won and the fight still coming. June rested her head on his shoulder. I thought I would spend my life running. Levi kissed her hair. You did. You just ran toward something instead of away. One evening in late summer, a rider came to the ranch with a letter from the county clerk. Inside was a formal notice that the investigation into Horace Trent had concluded. He had been found in a neighboring territory and arrested. His trial was set for the fall. The letter thanked Levi and June for their cooperation and noted that their testimony might be required. Levi read it twice and handed it to June. We might have to go back. She nodded. Then we go back. He studied her face. You are not afraid. She shook her head. Not anymore. He pulled her close. Good. Because I need you with me. She smiled against his chest. You have me. You always will. The trial happened in October, a cold, bright day with leaves turning gold on the cottonwoods. They rode into the county seat together, dressed in their best, and sat in the courtroom while lawyers argued and witnesses testified. When June was called, she walked to the front and swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor asked her about the papers she had taken. She answered clearly. I took them because I knew they were evidence. And I gave them to Levi Keene because I believed he would use them to stop a crime. The defense attorney tried to twist her words, to make her sound like a thief and a conspirator. She met his eyes and did not flinch. I am not ashamed of what I did. And I would do it again. Levi testified next. He spoke about his father, about the ranch, about the false accusation and the foreclosure. He spoke about the night June gave him the papers and the choice she made to trust him. When he finished, the prosecutor asked him one last question. Do you believe Miss Prescott acted out of malice or justice? Levi looked at June. Justice. Always. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Trent was found guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 10 years. When the verdict was read, June felt Levi's hand find hers, and she held on tight. They rode home under a sky streaked with orange and pink, the air sharp with the promise of winter. Neither of them spoke until they reached the ranch. Levi dismounted and helped her down, his hands lingering on her waist. It is over. She nodded. It is. He kissed her, slow and deep, and she kissed him back, feeling the weight of the past 2 years lift and scatter like dust. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you. She smiled. I know. He laughed. That is not an answer. She kissed him again. I love you too. Now take me home. Winter came hard and fast, snow piling high against the barn and the fences, the wind howling through the valley like a living thing. June and Levi spent the long nights by the fire, reading, talking, planning the spring planting. She learned to cook stew the way his mother had, thick and rich with carrots and potatoes. He learned to braid her hair when the cold made her hands stiff. They were building a life, piece by piece, and it felt solid in a way nothing ever had before. One night, she looked up from her book and found him watching her. What? He shook his head. Nothing. Just memorizing. She smiled. Memorizing what? He leaned over and kissed her. This. You. Us. She set down the book and pulled him closer. Then memorize this too. Spring returned, the snow melting into rushing streams, the grass turning green almost overnight. June rode the mail route, with the windows open and the sun warm on her face. She delivered letters and parcels, and people waved when she passed. Some asked about the trial. Others asked about the ranch. She answered with the truth, plain and simple, and moved on. She was not invisible anymore. She was known. And she was no longer afraid of being known. One afternoon, she found a letter in her satchel addressed to her. No return address, just her name in careful script. Inside was a single line. Thank you for proving that one person can make a difference. She folded it carefully and tucked it into her coat. That night, she showed it to Levi. He read it and smiled. You did that. She shook her head. We did that. Summer brought work and heat and long days in the saddle. June helped with the branding, with the fence repairs, with the endless tasks that kept her ranch running. She was strong now, her hands calloused, her arms lean and sure. Levi worked beside her, steady and tireless, and at night they fell into bed exhausted and happy. One evening, as the sun set red and gold over the valley, he pulled her onto the porch and wrapped his arms around her from behind. She leaned into him. What are you thinking? He rested his chin on her shoulder. That I never thought I would have this. She turned in his arms. Have what? He kissed her temple. Peace. Home. You. She smiled. You have all three. He tightened his hold. I know. And I am never letting go. She did not run anymore. She did not hide. She stood her ground, spoke her mind, and claimed the life she had fought for. And every morning, when she woke beside Levi in the small house they had built together, she felt the old wound close a little more. Her father had been broken by a man like Trent, but she had stopped one, and that mattered. Levi stirred beside her, his hand finding hers under the blanket. Morning. She kissed his shoulder. Morning. He pulled her closer. Stay in bed. She laughed. We have work. He groaned. Always work. She sat up, brushing her hair back. That is ranch life. He caught her wrist and pulled her back down. One more minute. She gave in, curling against him, and let the morning wait, because they had earned this. The quiet, the peace, the choice to stay.